Hi everyone! I have a lot going on right now, so forgive me if this video is not as thoughtful and polished as my usual content. But I wanted to put out a quick response to Cosmic Skeptic's follow-up video. While I appreciate that he hasn't gone full anti-vegan, and even stated that he doesn't want to draw negative attention to the vegan movement and hinder progress for the animals, he's not completely off the hook here. He made it a point to title his video more about my community post as opposed to why I'm no longer vegan, which is certainly preferable. But that doesn't change the fact that many people will still watch it and be influenced to either abandon veganism or not attempt it because it sounds too difficult. As far as ex-vegan announcements go, it could be much worse, but it's still full of contradictions and devoid of rational arguments. And following the ex-vegan script, Alex plays the victim. I mean, for fuck's sake, this is how he opens his video.
So as you can imagine, the past couple of weeks have not been particularly easy for me.
There were three major contradictions that stood out to me. One, he claims he's not trying to rationalize or come up with excuses.
It's really difficult to find a balance here between trying to talk about my experience whilst trying not to make it just sound like I'm making a bunch of excuses.
Yet the video is full of rationalizations and excuses. Two, he claims that he's not blaming veganism for his IBS and mental health issues.
It's important to stress that I don't have any health problems, at least to my knowledge, that are caused by veganism, right? Like the IBS thing, I'm not saying that veganism causes this.
Yet it presumably worsened his problems, otherwise he'd still be vegan. And three, he claims he's not asking for sympathy.
So look, I'm really not trying to make this some kind of sob story.
Yet his opening statement and the inclusion of all the mean messages he's received, as well as his vague allusion to suicidal ideation, are clear sympathy ploys. What is the point of this video if not to justify his actions? Ultimately, maintaining a healthy plant-based diet was impractical for him, and his rationale was that he has IBS and mental health issues that made it difficult to eat enough calories. He asserts that while not impossible, it's more difficult to meet your nutritional needs on a vegan diet. People say this as if it's a given, but where's the evidence for this? I'll grant that this is true if you have a bunch of allergies to things like soy, gluten, and nuts. But without food allergies, I don't see the logic. In fact, it's easier to meet your nutritional needs as a vegan, because the more animal products you eat, the less room there is in your diet for whole plant foods, which is what a healthy diet should primarily consist of. He says that because there were days when he struggled to eat more than 100 calories, he needed to shift his diet to include foods that were more nutrient-dense. What the fuck does this mean? The American Heart Association defines nutrient-dense foods as foods that are rich in vitamins, minerals, and other nutrients important for health, without too much saturated fat, added sugars, and sodium. Examples include fruits, vegetables, whole grains, nuts, and legumes, as well as lean meats and fish. Alex acknowledges that there was no specific nutrient he was lacking, but says that he was struggling to get enough calories. So presumably by nutrient-dense, he meant calorie-dense, while also nutrient-rich. It's true that in general, animal foods are more calorically dense than plant foods. But high-calorie, nutrient-rich plant foods exist. Peanut butter is a great example. It's packed with protein and other key nutrients, and 1 tablespoon contains 94 calories. You can easily increase the calorie content of nutrient-rich plant foods without increasing the volume by adding things like olive oil and coconut cream. He gives us no clarity on what exactly he's eating now, but in his original post he said primarily but not exclusively seafood. So let's look at the nutrient profile of fish and eggs versus plant-based protein sources. You can pause the video to compare. All of these foods meet the AHA, that's hard to say, the American Heart Association's definition of nutrient-dense, as they're relatively low in saturated fat and added sugar, and contain various nutrients. In what way are these animal foods superior? They're demonstrably not more nutrient-dense, and I don't even see how they're more convenient. There's nothing more convenient than a peanut butter sandwich, or Huel, as Joey mentioned. IBS and mental health issues like depression and anxiety are very common and affect vegans and non-vegans alike. Although I don't have IBS, I can very much relate to the distress caused by not having access to a toilet. I developed horrible anxiety in 2020, which affected my digestion. I felt nauseous 24/7, which made it extremely difficult to eat. And when the intense anxiety came on, I'd have diarrhea. Feeling the urge to poop and not having access to a bathroom would trigger a full-blown panic attack. so I can definitely empathize with Alex here. However, I cannot empathize with his decision to harm animals. Even at rock bottom, when I was underweight and having multiple panic attacks a day, I did not for a second consider eating animals again, because that makes literally no sense. I knew that I would regain the weight I had lost once I addressed my mental health issues. In the meantime, I survived on coconut yogurt, smoothies, mashed sweet potatoes, and protein bars because that's all I could force myself to eat. Now, my anxiety is much more manageable thanks to therapy, medication, and quitting social media, and I am able to eat a balanced diet again. A combination of therapy, medication, and positive lifestyle changes fix mental health problems. Animal products do not. Alex deserves sympathy for his health problems, but his health problems are not a justification for abusing others. This is super obvious in the human context. We do not accept mental health problems as a justification for beating your wife or shooting up a school. And being abused yourself is not an excuse to abuse others. Alex shares a compilation of mean comments and messages he's received from vegans, and I'll be honest, this part of the video read as pure emotional manipulation. I honestly didn't expect this from Alex. He lectures vegans on how to behave, while suffocating and decapitating fish because eating plants instead is too inconvenient. I agree with his point that comments like this are not a good look. Sending vitriolic private messages to people is not productive. But this is rich coming from him. Physically assaulting and killing someone is objectively worse than verbally attacking someone. I also want to point out, as others have, that of the thousands of comments Alex has received, and dozens of response videos, there really weren't that many cruel or unfair ones. Most vegans already agree that Vegan Gains is an asshole and that Vegan Teacher is completely unhinged. Vegan Gains thinks I'm a retarded SJW, and that Vegan Teacher would probably give me a C-. These people do not represent the vegan movement. Talking about them is a moot point. All he's doing is deflecting blame away from himself. The subtext of his post is that a vegan diet is difficult to sustain, and that boycotts are ineffective. His post is just as damaging to the vegan movement as the hateful comments he's choosing to highlight. Lastly, I want to highlight something Alex said in his debate with Mikhaila Peterson.
And I'm something of a reluctant vegan, actually. I started life on YouTube making videos about the philosophy of religion, which moved on to talking about philosophy more broadly, and then ethics, and then people kept kind of asking me, just as like a fringe issue. It was sort of like, people would ask me about abortion or euthanasia or, capital punishment or veganism. And I thought, I'll get around to all of these. And one day I finally decided to sit down and read Animal Liberation by Peter Singer, which is to this day the greatest philosophical defense of the vegan position that exists. And I just remember thinking, like, I must be missing something. It was so straightforward. It just seemed ethically obvious to me. And so I thought I must be missing something if this is still such a sort of fringe minority view. And so the past few years of my life have been an exercise in, trying to get people to talk me out of it. Please, for the love of God, somebody talk me out of it. Please. I really not only do I want to change my mind for the usual reason of just, intellectual consistency and self-challenge, but because I actually really don't want this to be true. I'm a big fan of KFC in particular.
I think this is quite telling. Ultimately, Alex was looking for a way out. He was begrudgingly vegan. It seems like he found an excuse that was good enough to justify his actions for himself. But it's far from the extraordinary justification he once said was required for the extraordinary harm we cause to animals.
Extraordinary harm and mistreatment requires extraordinary justification.
Thank you so much for watching. Please give this video a thumbs up and stay tuned for 2 weeks from now when I put out a response to Neil deGrasse Tyson. Alright, peace out.
Yo, how when me eat them, I wonder when me eat. When me tell them, say me no eat no fish, no meat now. How when me eat them, I wonder when me yam. When me tell them, say that I'm a vegan man. How when me eat them, I wonder when me eat. When me tell